Touching on the top picks and plays here for this NBA DFS slate on Monday. Let's go ahead and get in. Yesterday wasn't the best results, and I'll be the first one to admit that, but that also tells me that today should be a better day, just kind of given natural regression of that stuff. But there's a couple of comments yesterday kind of saying, oh, yesterday was bad. I'm like, yes, that's going to happen, guys. And also, I laid out the reasons as to why it could be. And a lot of that was due to stacking. We were trying to stack that game and betting unders based off of kind of what Vegas was telling us the games were going to go, how they were going to go. And that just didn't happen. I think that's a very smart way to go about attacking this stuff is both, especially when you're trying to do more than 2 bets, is to do stack and to chase what Vegas thinks is going to happen. Time and time again, if you do that, like we did Saturday afternoon with that Charlotte game, the Charlotte Indy game, it's going to work out. So just kind of wanted to address that. We'll do better today. I got a decent feeling. Yesterday we were forcing a bunch of unders that I didn't really like, and I feel like I very vocalized that. So let's go ahead and get into the top 10 picks for today. So number 10 for me is going to be Mike Conley over 10.5 points. Okay. And this one does worry me, just given the fact that he both hasn't done it in a while, but that's also why I like it, in the fact that he hasn't done it in a while. So naturally he is due to get there at some point. The over and under for his projected points has been here a bunch lately, and he hasn't gotten the over. Now, obviously he's gotten close, really just one bucket away in several games. And I just feel like, given the natural kind of regression with sports and with this, is that he is just due to have a game in which he gets 11 points or so. Obviously been there a lot. And then just looking at the game against Cleveland, this is also partially a worry with me, is that the last time out against Cleveland, 26. Okay, so obviously not great, but 3 for 8. If he can get another bucket, he should be fine. Far from a lock, but that's also why it's my 10th favorite. And data-wise, actually, that's one of the bets in which projection-wise, it's the best to hit. So take that for what it's worth as well. So you guys can already see, this game with Utah is actually going to be a game in which I'm going to stack, and hopefully we're just on the correct side of the stack, and hopefully Vegas is right, because then it could yield some really good results. So I do like Darius Garland over 30.5 today, and that's going to be for points, rebounds, and assists. Now with him as well, kind of my worry is the fact that in the previous game against Utah, he didn't get there. Okay. But that game was a blowout, I should call out. And so with me trying to stack this game, these are 2 players in which I think if the game goes the way kind of Vegas thinks it's going to, these are 2 players that should be able to get there over. Obviously Garland's going to be involved. He's going to get some points. He just needs a few more rebounds, and a few more points really. Fouled out in that game as well, but it was a blowout, so didn't really need much, and it doesn't really take much for him to get more. So we know that the Charlotte bigs are a spot to attack in DFS. So that's what I'm going to be doing with the next 2. We got OG, and I think OG against Charlotte obviously makes a ton of sense. Been right around this projected total as well. Points, rebounds, and assists. The thing with it is players against Charlotte get a big bump in both points and rebounds. Okay, they're one of the weakest at guarding, centers, and in power forward, and really just every other position in general. Okay, OG fantasy point wise has been a consistent fantasy producer, and if we can get, I would say, maybe 28 or 29 maybe for a fantasy projection, that is something that we can jump on. Obviously we don't have that just yet, so that's why I'm chasing the points, rebounds, and assists. But this is also going to be a game in which I do think we can get away with stacking. We can see just a very solid, consistent producer, given the bump in production against Charlotte that players have. I like him a decent amount, but also he's rated 8th, so much more of a piece that you would put in with the stack. So I also like SIAKAM for those reasons, and more so those reasons because he obviously more of a forward center. Just on the season, he averages over this point total, which is obviously pretty good. We like that approach at 25.5. And he is someone that, 3 out of the past 5 games has been able to get that over just barely. But we look at the matchup with Charlotte. It's a matchup that gives up the 3rd most points to opposing centers, and they actually give up around 23 or 25.3. Obviously, Pascal Siakam, really great player, and so you'd expect him to get that over. But once again, this is going to be a piece of a stack that I like. You could go Kawhi, OG, and I'll show you the other 2 that I like to run it back with Charlotte. They're going to be 2 of the same players that we played 2 nights ago. So I also like Vanderbilt over the points here. 8.8, not that much for him, and we can see just recently been able to get there and get that production 3 out of the last 5 games. So that's encouraging there. Looking at the last game against Cleveland as well, I got 7 points, which to me is encouraging because they only had 24 minutes. Obviously that game was a blowout. I guess the issue with that would be the fact that, he might not get that much of a minutes bump tonight. Maybe just a final rotation more. And that's really the biggest question mark with Utah. And that's kind of what makes them risky, especially for someone like Vanderbilt, where the minutes are not secure. But at the same time, I think chances are he will get over this number, especially if the game stays close. And that's the biggest question for that game. And that's the biggest reason that could hurt us, is if that game doesn't go over. You could potentially go with rebounds, where he's been able to get that over much more frequently. But obviously with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, that wouldn't exactly be the best approach. You could also go with points, rebounds, and assists. Another approach that you can go with, obviously, has been able to hit that 4 straight times. So I just think there is a good chance that Vanderbilt is going to be a nice piece, especially in a stack. Like if you were trying to do a stack that's like 5 deep, try to hit one of those. This is a game in which I think makes logical sense. And maybe you do worry about this game blowing out and you stack it the opposite way. I'd be fine with that as well. I think it's going to be a close game. Vegas still thinks it's going to be a pretty close game. So I want to be stacking that game. That's why we're attacking this game. So the next piece of that game that I like to stack is going to be LAURI over 25.5 points. We can see he's been consistently getting that over. He has been someone that just Vegas hasn't really respected, given his production. If you played him at the start of the season with some other bets and whatnot, you are up on the season. And we can see he is kind of priced a little bit higher than his average, because his average is 24.5 on the season. We are kind of trying to chase the hot hand here, okay? We are trying to chase this game staying close and him getting that final rotation. And if he does, he's going to get 2 more points. So 24 points in the previous game against them. It really just takes that game staying close, him getting a final rotation, and he should be able to hit that over tonight. And so the first, several bets there were definitely more situational bets you would put in with a stack, more than 2 picks is what you're doing. You're trying to hit, a bigger payout. With Jared Allen, I feel like this is just a safe kind of play, and I would be looking at the points, rebounds, and assists for Jared Allen. And this is definitely due to matchup. The Utah Jazz are pretty poor against opposing bigs. And if we were to just look at like DFS projection wise, like projected outcome on today's slate, he would be one of the ones in which have one of the highest differences between what he's currently projected to get, if that makes sense. And then just pulling up what he did last time out against Utah, 20 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 assists. So obviously just really went off and dominated. I don't think we're going to get 20 points out of him, but if we can just get him basically hitting his season average, and maybe a little bit more than that, because obviously the matchup is good, then he should be able to hit this over. That should, in theory, be a pretty safe bet, and so should the next bet. So this bet with Donovan Mitchell is a very interesting one. If you look at some of the other Vegas odds that are out there for sportsbooks, actual sportsbooks, some have him at 28.5 and some have him at 29.5. So that would already suggest that we are getting a very solid projection here for Donovan Mitchell. And that might tell me that this could be the Taco Tuesday bet of the day, where they just lower his projection down even more because they realize they kind of messed this up. But this is a great buying opportunity. Like in theory, we are getting 1 to 2 points of an edge here. And so that is something that I want to chase. This is already a game in which we want to chase as well. So all that kind of adds up to Mitchell being kind of I wouldn't say sneaky good play, but kind of just the correct play given the situation. And the worry with him would be, once again, only 23 minutes and only 23 points, but also he had 23 points in 23 minutes. Like if this game stays close, he should be able to hit that number pretty easily, So this is very much a bet that's predicated on Vegas, kind of their expectation for today, but also the fact that we are getting an edge there. So obviously for these two, it's a situational stack. You're saying that game's going to stay close, and it's going to be one in which I kind of expect to favor Utah a little bit more. And now the next two, and it's 3, I got 3 with 2 players, is going to be kind of a way in which you could run out a secondary stack. Okay, so obviously if the game goes our way in this game, it should be a good stack. And then if the game goes the way I think it will in the next game, it should be a good stack. Like the probability of the both hitting are going to be better. So I also like PLUMLEE to get the over, and this is really just us hoping that this game stays close. Vegas has it projected to be a game that is like teetering on being a blowout and not being a blowout. So that's going to be the biggest worry with Charlotte and with Toronto, those Toronto players as well. But if it stays close, it's going to be because Mason PLUMLEE is continuing to have a good game. 4 out of his last 5 games, he's gotten the over, and obviously the matchup with Toronto isn't like appealing, but he was able to get there against Milwaukee, which is also a difficult matchup. So given the fact that both Gordon Hayward and Kelly Oubre are still expected to be out, I kind of expect the same players that have been going off to still go off. Like Jaden McDaniels is also one that I think would be a good play as well. And then I also like Washington over points, kind of just for the same reasons I just laid out for PLUMLEE. Like I'm just expecting him to continue to play well, and I'm just hoping that they can keep this game, pretty close. I will say points, rebounds, and assists is also a very appealing one. He's been right there. basically 4 straight games and has been able to get that over twice now in a row. Then another one that for me is kind of going to be one that I like is the points and steals. Like obviously been over that a bunch lately. And it's not that much. Like 2 is not that much for a guy that has consistently been getting that over as well. So I think that is a pretty interesting one to go with if you choose to do so as well. So these would be my top 4 as it sits right now. I kind of, after I did this video, I'm kind of leaning more towards Jarrett Allen being the best for points, rebounds, and assists. Just given the matchup, it should be pretty easy to get like 9 points, 9 rebounds, and maybe 6 assists, 7 assists, I guess is what he would need, or to get slightly over that. Like I feel like he's the most likely to get there. So I might just, whatever the Taco Tuesday is, I might just go with Jarrett Allen. But I kind of like Mason Plumlee and PJ Washington because I feel like their projections are based off of the game being a blowout. Like if it's not a blowout, if that game stays close enough, I feel like Mason Plumlee and Washington are going to be able to get there. But that's all I have for you guys for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give a like and subscribe. That helps me continue to put out more content for you guys. All right, let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.